So if you watched the last video, you've seen that I got the engine in. I did a couple things off camera just for convenience sake. The big thing I did was I put the power steering pump back in place just because it was like hanging off to the side. The reservoir was up here just so that I could close the hood without you know, hitting anything. So I just moved that stuff back, but I put those bolts back in. I also installed the pitch stop mount just before I forgot. Got this Grimspeed polyurethane billet aluminum. That'll stiffen some things up and go good with my group end motor mounts and tranny mounts. So today, what's on the agenda is to get all of the accessories back on the front of the engine, get the radiator back in, so I gotta move the AC over, put the alternator back in. I can't do the intercooler yet because I still have some wiring to do. I need to get my oil pressure gauge in. It's on back order, but that needs to go plug into that hole right down there behind the hose clamp. So I can't put the intercooler on because I need to put the oil pressure sensor in there, but pretty much everything other than the intercooler can go back in. Okay, so alternator bracket's got to come back off so that I can put my AC pump on this alternator bracket, and then I can install the alternator. Back in their homes. Okay, now for the brake booster line. This line was really hard to get off because I guess there was some sort of vacuum going on. So that's there. Some sort of suction with the brakes. So it went on easy, but that one does not come off easy. Okay, so now that the belts are all on, I can get the crank pulley torqued to final spec. So the engine is in gear. The torque spec that Grimspeed says on their installation instructions for this crank pulley is 94 foot-pounds. Subaru OEM is like 130, but I'm just going to do 94 because that's what Grimspeed recommends. Hopefully nothing spins or moves. Okay, so radiator is now installed. I got all the plugs connected and everything. I reconnected these hoses that go to the turbo reservoir. I was gonna get my air oil separator started to put on, but I still need to do some wiring over here, and if that's right here, it's gonna get in the way, so I'm just gonna leave it off for now. I'll take care of that later. Also, that little hole I showed you that the pressure sensor needs to go into, if I hook up the line to that Y, that'll be in the way of me getting that sensor in there, so we're just gonna save that for later. But now I'm gonna move on to getting the air box put on. And I'm gonna pull this rag out before I forget it. While the oil filter dries, I'm going to start working on some fuel system stuff, but I want to make that its own video, so you'll see that later on. All I really have left to do after I get the filter in is to, I guess I could put my O2 sensor in the downpipe and kind of tidy up those wires accordingly, as well as route the wire to the EGT probe down there. But pretty much done for now until I get that oil pressure sensor in, and then I can further continue putting this back together. So my filter is oiled, you can see, and clean and oiled, so now I can go ahead and finish installing all this stuff onto the engine. I'm going to start wiring in some of the gauges I do have. So I have this O2 sensor, wideband O2 that came with the AEM gauge. So I'm going to install this into the downpipe right over here, and then I'm going to get the wires cleanly routed. And so here's my dilemma. As you've seen, this is where I mounted the sensor, and that's where the plug is. Now, they give you a lot of line, a lot of wire, so that you could route this down your exhaust. But since mine's like right there, my wiring's gonna be right there, I really only needed probably 2 feet. Instead I got 10. What I'm going to do, in order to keep this neat, I can't trim the ends off this without having to repin it, which I don't really want to do that because I don't really know how to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull all this excess wire through the firewall, and then I'm going to put it up in a knot, you know, not a knot, but like a loom, and, you know, tuck it away somewhere underneath the dash so that it's hidden and it looks clean and nice. Most of the slack is out of line. I routed it underneath this pitch stop mount right down here, and then I'm going to have it bow out like that, make sure it's away from any heat, but I'm going to zip tie it to this AC line. I'm also going to just wrap up this section with some electrical tape just to make sure there's not too much exposed wires. Alright, so there you have it. Nice and cleanly routed. I'm going to pull it through a little bit more. Actually, I could probably just push it through. There we go. So now it's routed away from all the heat, but I got a good tap there. Not too much wire, but let me show you how much extra wire I have on the inside. There's enough wire to stretch to the end of the car. So I'm going to have to wrap that up, get it all nice and tidy. But I think it'll be fine. I got all this space in here to hide a chunk of wire like that. It shouldn't be a big issue. Now that that's done, I'm going to get some of these wires situated. In the mail, I have some plugs that plug into these guys right here. Now, these are the old TGV connectors. Now there's a power, a signal, and a ground wire. So these sensors, they have an analog data logging option. So if I hook them up to a signal, power, and a ground, I can log the information that the sensor is picking up. So I have an empty port right here, an empty port right here. Now, that being said, that gives me 2 locations where I can log data from. So this side I have the AFR gauge, so I'm going to log AFR from the passenger side TGV, and then on this side, right down here, I have my EGT sensor. So I'm going to log EGT from this side of and that's going to, you know, communicate with my factory ECU, and when I'm data logging, I can find out what my air fuel ratio is and what my EGTs are at a certain point in time. Yeah, pretty much you just take these wires. You see red is power, black is ground, and then I think the white is positive signal and brown is negative signal ground. So you just wire those into those connectors and plug them in and you're good to go. So I'm going to get the corresponding wires in the general vicinity and correct lengths, pull the rest of the slack through, get the EGT plug hooked up on that side, route the wires, get everything nice and clean. so that from this point on, after I get the oil pressure sensor, all the stuff I'm going to have to do will be inside the car. That's the sensor right there in the header. That goes up here. I plugged in the connector right there. So now this wire, I can probably route it against the same line that I did the AFR. So I'm going to recut these zip ties, and you know, I'll re-zip tie it once I have all the wires that are going to run past there, but I think there's going to be a couple other wires, so I'm going to leave it for now, and then I'm going to zip tie them all together so there's less zip ties, it looks cleaner, and all that good stuff. The wiring is roughly routed. These two lines right here are for the EGT sensor, signal, and the actual sensor itself. So those are just running in together. And then this is where the other one ends up, because I'm going to splice on that plug, and then it's going to plug in right down there. So that's enough wire for that. And then once everything's wired in permanently, I will permanently zip tie it up to that line. And then the AFR comes right here, because the plug is right down here behind the turbo on that side. So that will also be wired in. But yeah, that plumbed pretty well, I would say. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. I definitely had a good time making it. I'm glad that the car is almost done. There's still, you know, some time and some things I need to do before it's actually running, but we're getting really, really, really close to having the car, you know, in operational condition. I mean, in all reality, I could probably start it up now if I wanted to, but I want to be safe about it, so I'm going to hold off on that. But yeah, stay tuned for the fire up video. As always, thanks for watching, and I will see you on the next one.